pages, it was perfect size. By the time it was done, it was tore up anyways. So.
Well, it is 7 o'clock, and I would like to welcome everyone here tonight. It is good to see almost a full house. And our first order of business, we are going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first order of business, we're going to consider the minutes of the January 24, 2023 regular meeting and the February 6, 2023 special meeting.
I move that we accept those minutes.
Second. Okay, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Next item, we're going to consider closing Athletic Park Circle on June 17, 2023 from 6:30 to 10:30 a.m. for the Cookie Daze 5K. Denise?
Yes, thank you. This is a request that, to close Athletic Park Circle, and that would be on June 17th. Staff has looked at this. They approved this, so we'd recommend approval of the closing.
I would move for approval of the street closing.
I second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Next item, we're going to consider an ordinance amending the parking on Pine Street from the south right-of-way line on East 7th to 140 foot south. Suzanne?
Yes, this is actually, we're considering where the yellow is shown on the map, it is on 7th Street from Pine, 140 feet south. With the construction of the new library, which you can kind of see the footprint of it, there is going to be additional traffic along Pine during construction, and when it is completed, there will be an entrance just south of 7th Street for the book drop-off, and it's going to be difficult. It's a pretty narrow street for people to make their turns, and the contractor requested temporary parking along this area in yellow during construction. I talked with Ardent Mills, and they actually wanted to have this be no parking permanently. That works out with our plans for the library. In the end, it would make a better traffic way without parking on that side. There's currently no parking on the west side. So we have brought to you an ordinance that would limit or actually eliminate parking for the area that you see here on the map. And if you so choose, we would ask that you approve the ordinance as presented.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number
5110-23.
5110-23.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to item 4, and before we get started with the real meat and potatoes, I would just like to say that for those of you that don't know, the 5 of us commissioners, we took a trip up to Michigan City and we visited one of the GAF plants there. Supposedly it is the most caustic, if you will, of their 27 plants, and that if anything is going to be wrong, that's going to be wrong with that plant. So I'll just speak from my experience, and then if any of you want to jump in, but I was thoroughly impressed with the culture of that company, with obviously the first thing that I did and all of us did when we got there, and we went separately. We didn't have any opens meetings violations. We just went 2 at a time and 1 at a time. But obviously the odor, you know, you talk about an asphalt plant, if that's what this is going to be, which it may or may not, but there was no odor on the outside. When you go into the plant, there was some in some areas, but you know, it was very negligible, I would say. And then as far as noise or those types of things, it seemed to really blend in well with the neighborhood. You know, it was in a residential neighborhood. One of the things that I said before I went was that I was going to talk to a neighbor to see what their experience was living there, and And we got to one that had been there, I think she said 22 years or something like that. And so this was in the evening time, and I knocked on the door. It was dark outside, and she came to the door and let me in. And I said, I just want to know, what's your experience with the GAF plant? And this was about a half a block away. And I go, is there anything that you can say that is negative about the plant? And she goes, young man, come with me. I want to show you something. And she took me over to her, she lived in a one-story house, but there was a small basement down there. And in the stairwell, there was a big old crack running down the wall there. And she goes, now these semis, they go by here every day, multiple times a day. And she goes, I know that crack has to be from those semis rumbling by here. And I go, okay. Is there any undue noise coming from the plant? Well, no. Do you get any smells or any odors? Well, no. But that crack right there, I know that's from those semis driving by here. So, you know, anyways, I thanked her for her time. She was just a sweet little old lady. And I knew that because of where this plant is proposed to go, there's not going to be any houses next door or a half a block away. And so that's not going to be an issue. Anyways, that was, and I was thoroughly impressed with the culture from top to bottom. We were able to talk to some of the employees there in the plant. And, you know, it's one of the highest paying facilities there in that city. And so that was my experience. Do any of the rest of you want to share yours?
Commissioner Valentine and I went on the first trip, I believe it was, and the culture really was something that really stood out for me. You know, as we approached the plant and went over, they have is it an estuary or a waterfowl area next to it?
Maybe a wetlands.
Wetlands. We got there and we were outside the plant, and first thing Commissioner Valentine and I did was roll the windows down, and we're like, all right, let's do the sniff test, and we couldn't find anything, but they run that plant very well. Looking at the automation and speaking with the operators of the equipment, these operators are not masked up and hazardous. In fact, I think the only person that really was wearing any sort of precaution outside of a normal manufacturing environment would have been the individuals that were operating with the fiberglass substrate of the shingle material. Right up, the ventilation was just, you could stand next to the machine and not even really smell it or anything. Safety, there wasn't any concern with safety. The team members that were operating that equipment throughout, it was I think a good match for our community, a company that runs like that.
I would agree very much, and I just appreciated the approach that GAF takes toward the community. When they come to the community and they settle in, they get busy with various things that might be in the community. They're not waiting. I think one of the gentlemen there said that they don't wait for someone to knock on their door. They get busy with involvement in the community, and I think that's a great plus. That's very important. We should welcome that and be very thankful for that.
Okay, well, let's get right to it then. Chris, do you want to lead us off with what we're going to talk about?
I'll absolutely lead it off, and I've got city staff here with me, and also bond counsel Sarah Steele from Gilmore and Bell, who'll jump in on a portion. So just to provide some background for the audience, this item pertains to the city's purchase and sale of what we've called the Tindall Property, which is 230 acres southwest of Southeast 12th and Hillside. As you recall, the city entered into an option agreement with Tindall to purchase the property for approximately $1.18 million. Subsequent to that, the city entered into a PSA which provided GAF with the option to purchase the property for $1.88 million. I'm going to go through each of the steps. There's 7 of them on the agenda, and although they're listed independently, each relies on the other. It's not you can't really separate them out. They all rely on each. So I'm going to go through each of them prior to the action item. The first item that you see is A. That's to conduct a public hearing on the issuance of bonds. Prior to a city issuing bonds, you need to conduct a public hearing. It'll include this report from staff. We will allow the opportunity for GAF to talk about the project. And then anyone that's interested in the project can speak to that. Prior to that, Sarah Steele will give you an overview of the IRB process. So that's A. Option B is a resolution that has two components. One, it approves a development agreement. And number two, it determines the advisability of issuing the bonds. It's the next step in going forward with the IRB process. The third is to consider a zoning amendment. Now, this one was a little bit different because of the process, so I'm going to touch on that. It was in my memo. But on December 5th, the Planning Commission had a public hearing on this to change the zoning from I-2 to I-3. A quorum was established with 6 of 9 of the planning commissioners present. You had 2 that voted in favor of changing the zoning from I-2 to I-3. And again, for the folks, I-3 is a more elevated industrial use from an I-2. 2 voted in favor of the change, 3 voted against, and 1 abstained. So under the city's zoning ordinance, this is a failure to recommend because it's a vote in either direction by less than a majority. You only had essentially 3 and 2. So under a failure to recommend, it comes to the city commission and you have the authority to take any action that you deem appropriate. Those 3 steps would be to override and issue an I-3 zoning, to deny the zoning, or to send it back to the planning commission. Under state statute, a failure to recommend essentially does require a supermajority vote. So if you are to go to an I-3 designation, we would need 4 or 5 commissioners to vote in favor of that. It should be noted that as part of both the PSA and the development agreement, it requires the property to change to an I-3. So if there is any concern with an I-3, that needs to be addressed prior to the approval of the development agreement. After the zoning amendment discussion and decision, there is an ordinance that's been prepared should you elect to change the zoning to I-3. And then the next 2 items are items that you've done before. The first extends the city's option agreement with Tindall to give us more time to execute that option. This would extend it to May 1st of 2023. Item F is an amendment to the PSA that we have with GAF, which extends their right to purchase to May 1st. And then finally, item G is more of a housekeeping item, but it relates to the releases of a restrictive covenant, sewer easement, and temporary construction easement. Those are things that are found on the chain of title and part of the due diligence process that GAF had to ask for certain encumbrances on the property to be removed. City staff is supportive on these items and ready to go forward. I think before we go forward with the public hearing, I will defer to Sarah to go over the IRB process, but I might touch on the development agreement just a bit first. The development agreement that's been negotiated with between city staff and GAF includes certain city incentives and obligations. The first is the issuance of IRBs, and like I said, I'm going to have Sarah kind of go in detail on the IRB process and what that means. Second is to design and construct rail that connects the existing rail, which is northwest of the property. I don't know if we have the map of the property. Maybe another one. One more? Okay, well, yeah, that's okay. The blue outline is the property that's at issue. There's an existing tract that's just northwest of the property. So this obligation has to do with the city's design and construction to connect it to the property. Should be noted that the city has received a KDOT grant to take care of that project and additional rail adjacent to the property. The next obligation is to enter into a contract with a rail transportation service company to service this new rail line. Another obligation is for the city to pave hillside between 1st and 12th, but it should be noted that that is contingent on grant funds being awarded, so the city has an obligation to pursue that grant. The next is to have an I3 zoning designation on the property. And then finally, in that same section of the agreement, it talks about the city's obligation to provide our costs, any costs that aren't covered by the rail grant that could be reimbursable by GAF. So it's a minor obligation, but it's in that section, so I thought I would cover it. I mean, in short, all of these obligations are set to facilitate GAF to make a very significant investment in the community. I will say that the CBA that's in the packet now, it has been updated. The one that was in there on Friday showed an investment of $279 million. The new one is updated, and I have hard copies for anyone that may have seen the other version. But the one that's online right now is proper to issue up to $350 million in IRBs. It should be noted that GAF cannot see any benefit of that unless and until they invest at least $75 million in improvements. So with that, and I should also note the employment numbers within 4 years of operation, 137 full-time employee equivalent. With that being said, I will hand it over to Sarah to talk about IRBs before we have a public hearing and open it up for comments from GAF and anyone in the public that would like to speak.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Sarah Steele with Gilmore and Bell. We're bond counsel to the city. And as Chris mentioned, one of the components of the development agreement is the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. These are being offered to provide two primary benefits. One is a sales tax exemption on all of the materials and any furnishings, personal property on which they don't otherwise have a sales tax exemption, to provide for that during construction of the facility. The second benefit is up to 10 years, 100%, and they have requested the full property tax exemption on this property. So those are the two statutory benefits that are available to the city to offer through the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. And as part of that, as Chris mentioned, there was a cost-benefit analysis prepared. That's required to be prepared and provided to you prior to the public hearing. And the primary page that I would direct your attention to is page 3 of that cost-benefit analysis. It does provide for the ratio of benefit to cost. And if you see, if you've got the right cost-benefit analysis, it shows a positive benefit to cost ratio on all of the taxing jurisdictions included. So cities at 1.05, counties at 1.06, the state is at 1.65, and the school district is at 1.58. So it's a positive benefit to cost ratio for all taxing jurisdictions. The remainder of my caution is this cost-benefit analysis is based purely on the estimates of the company at this point in time. There's no guarantee that this is going to happen, but it is a tool that the state requires to be presented to you. As I mentioned, the industrial revenue bonds are being offered to be issued for the two benefits. The industrial revenue bonds, unlike your city bonds that you issue, are not in any way an obligation of the city, doesn't count towards debt of the city or toward your debt limit. So it's purely a matter of accommodation for these economic incentives. So that being said, the first step in the issuance of industrial revenue bonds is to hold a public hearing. That's always a requirement if there is a property tax abatement involved with the industrial revenue bonds. So unless you have any questions of me, I would suggest perhaps you go ahead and convene the public hearing. And I think GAF would like to make a presentation initially and then open it to the public. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Well, so at this time, we're going to open up the public hearing, and GAF, if you want to come forward and share with us.
We're going to forego a presentation tonight and just make a statement if we can. First of all, it's good to see y'all again. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for your observations from the trip to Michigan City. Appreciate that. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way. What we really wanted to bring to the table tonight was the fact that we found it a very good experience working with the city, with the commissioners, with the city staff. Chris and Kelly and Zach and Suzanne have been very gracious and very tough in their negotiations, and we appreciate that. We appreciate that a lot. It would be a travesty not to mention Beth Shelton as well, who's not with us tonight, but I know she's watching. So Beth has shepherded this situation through and has been a great experience working with the folks here in Newton. We look forward to future collaboration as well. So thank you, and it's a pleasure being here.
Tommy?
Thank you.
You might give your name and your position with GAF.
I can do that. Who's speaking?
Me.
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Too many microphones. I'm sorry. My name's Tommy Richardson. I'm Vice President of Operations for GAF. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Tommy. So let's open it up for anyone else who would like to speak about GAF. You're welcome to come up to the podium, state your name.
Hi, I'm Jerry Clausen. I live at 2136 South Spencer Road, Newton. I believe you probably all made up your minds on what you're going to do with GAF already. We, my husband Dallas and I and some others here, have concerns yet about GAF. We hope you can tell us through some facts and studies that there will be no chemicals released into the air from the plant and that our water will not be affected. I've heard from you all many times that you don't smell anything when you went to visit the plant in Indiana. And I don't believe that addresses the concerns we have. Not all chemicals have a smell. We're also concerned about the rezoning from general industrial to heavy industrial. Heavy industrial gives a lot of leeway to the company. What will happen on that property in the future because of the rezoning? We farm on that section that the plant is planning to build. Dallas is a third-generation farmer. Our boys are now farming with us. We care what happens. I hope you can address our concerns. We live next door.
Hi, my name is Pam Stevens, and I live at 306 Morningside Lane. I've lived in this community for a long time, for about 35 to 40 years. This is my home. I was lucky to go on a trip that the Chamber helped pay for me to go to Indiana and see the facility myself. I was so impressed with their sense of community within their workforce. A lot of those people have been there 20 years or more. Even there were family members where a dad worked there and then the son worked there as well. There was no smell. I know we worry about that, but they had cleaned up the creek that was behind the plant and created like a little wetlands park. And it had been a dumping ground for people that were dumping in there. It wasn't GAF, but they took it upon themselves to clean that up. And now it's a great walking path where people can go and do that. I got to meet with the chamber executive that was there. There's a lot of similarities with our community and them. They kind of have a low income, and what I was impressed for, one of the secretaries were there, and she was eating lunch with us and said, I wasn't ever able to own my own home, and once I got this job, I now have 2 homes. So I thought, what a great testament of what we can do for our community that is also low income and how it can raise everybody up. They have a very good skilled staff. I didn't feel uneasy at all walking through the plant. We spent quite a bit of time going through the plant, learning the process, and never once felt like, oh gosh, I should have a mask on, this is scary. I felt very comfortable. All the workers didn't have masks on. The only guy was the one that was rolling out the sheet with the fiberglass because that's what his main job was. But they have cleaned up the water that was there behind the plant. And what's so important to me is we finally have the perfect match, I feel, for our community. For so long, we've tried to fill that industrial park, and finally I feel like we have the right match. They had to build another facility off that site because they didn't have enough space because it's all in a residential community. And our site, they can have everything right there on one space instead of having 2 different facilities that we had to tour. So I think, I think it's really a blessing that this is coming about, that we finally have somebody, especially after losing Master Brand, that I feel this will bring great paying jobs to our community, and I think they'll be a great partner. They reached out several years ago when they started first looking at our community, to the chamber, and how could they be involved and learn more about the community. And to me, that says a lot. I mean, my kids live here, my grandkids live here. If I had any reservation about this company, I would speak up. But I feel that this is such a great company that will really lift up Newton and continue to help us move forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Andrew Nave. I'm with the Greater Wichita Partnership, which is at 505 East Douglas Avenue. I'll be brief. I just want to echo the thoughts here locally about how exciting this is, not merely for Newton and for Harvey County, but for our entire region. I was on the phone this afternoon talking with Beth, obviously knowing she couldn't be here today, but with some other economic developers in the region. It was actually noted by a colleague of ours in Hutchinson that you all were here having this discussion and this deliberation tonight. I was also talking with a colleague from Wichita State University, and they referenced reading about this project tonight. What you all are considering here with GAF is truly remarkable. This is one of the largest capital investments in our region in recent history that anybody knows. $350 million. I know numbers get big and projects and investments and infrastructure, that kind of gets lost. $350 million is a massive investment. In fact, over the last 5 years, the numbers that our office would track regionally would be the largest private sector investment over the last 5 years anywhere in the region. So this is a considerable investment. The jobs that are being proposed by this company, and to hear the comments about the quality of the workforce and the quality of the company culture, I could not think of a better fit for Newton and Harvey County. And so again, just on behalf of the region, we are excited about what this company is proposing. We are really excited about what this means for this community. Kudos to your city staff and to your team here, certainly to the Harvey County EDC team. You have to go through the process. You have to be methodical, ask the questions, certainly address the concerns that are raised. But what a truly historic moment for this region and, quite frankly, for our state to have this partnership with GAF. So again, kudos to you all, and thank you for bringing this to the region. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. My name is Sal Lujano, and I wear many hats in this community, and today I'm here as President of the Chamber of Commerce, and I just want to say a few words as far as Newton is at that point where we're ready to move into the future, and we welcome GAF, and we want to hold your hand as a partnership, open that door and go ahead and take that step forward. I'm also here to say a few words on behalf of a friend that couldn't make it tonight. He's a member of Emerge, which is our young professionals group, and he wanted to make sure that his voice was heard. So from Alex Vermillion, Our family has lived and called Newton home for many years and will continue to do so as long as life will allow. We have been hopeful for economic development, which will help the community thrive and be a competitive place for others to also call home. This investment would be just that, a flagship for GAF to benefit their future while Newton gains a community partner who has demonstrated a desire to be an asset to the area. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Ron Lang. Live at 713 Bobtail Court. Just saying a few words on behalf of the Harvey County Economic Development Council. I've served as past president of the council and currently on the executive committee. Beth is unable to be here tonight, as been mentioned. I'm sure she'd have some words to say if she were here, but I would just like to thank Tommy and the GAF representatives for being here, working with our community, committing to come to our community, city staff for all your involvement, commissioners for taking your time to travel to Indiana, to tour the facility, to vent some of the questions that have been raised. Just appreciation for everybody that's put everything involved, the state that's involvement, the city and GAF. Thank you for considering our community. We look forward for many years of working with you.
Hi, Mayors, Commissioners. I'm Warren Weens, 1926 South Hillside. Somebody made the comment there wouldn't be no housing out there, but there's already, I second everything the Clausens had to say. We live directly across the road from where I understand that plant will be. So we'd be within a couple hundred feet. There's also another house south of us across to the west side. Like she said, the smells, not necessarily the smell, you can't see it, you can't feel it, and you don't always know it's there. You're gonna have dust up and down that road. And I guess I read the article in the paper about going to Indiana, but it never said the quality of housing that was there. Is that, you know, I bring this up as instant, the city of El Dorado has a refinery. I know this is not a refinery. But the housing right around that is more, and I'm not putting anybody down, but it's more of a lower income housing. And I would just put that out there, is that the quality of, not saying they're not a quality company, but is that the quality of growth this town and the state, Harvey County needs? Thank you.
Commissioners, Mayor, Andy Ortiz, 6530 South Kansas Road, Newton, Kansas. So I'm an entrepreneur locally, and I sit on the USD 373 Board of Education, and we have a fantastic CTE program. And when I look at what GAF is doing and the other communities that they're serving, I've been following their company for quite some time now. The involvement, the pitching in, the benevolence, it's unbelievable. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity for our CTE program to plug into them and to see what we can create through what they bring to the table. So really excited to have you guys. We look forward to working with you guys, and there's a lot of opportunity here, so thank you for considering us.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stan Broadhagen. I have a house in Wichita, 2019 North Frederick, and I have a house in Newton at 701 North Meridian. First of all, let me say I'm not financially involved in this project in any way. I am a developer, both in real estate and other things. I've been before this commission many times on zoning. Dillon store, Walgreens store, McDonald's, Wendy's, Newton Medical Center. Newton Medical Center, when we did that rezoning, some of the Quail, not very many, a couple of the Quail Creek people came over and said they were against it because they wanted it to remain a wheat field. So, and I've also had people where I show up at a zoning and they were against it, and 2 years later they call me up and say, you know, we think we want to have ours rezoned that too. I recently built a building over by the outlet mall behind Burger King because that area has not been developed as it should be. And I also know that one of the people in this room sold off that land for Burger King and the other to be developed and it had to be rezoned. They also own a large tract of that ground, which is farm ground, and farm ground sells for about $7,000 an acre. Development ground, $10,000 to $15,000. Commercial ground over there, $50,000 an acre. So I'm sure they'll be in here sometime before this commission and want that rezoned. I've been through this many, many times when the opposition shows up, and then years later, they're wanting to do the same thing. I think this is good for Newton. I've been in business here 50 years, my family for 100 years, and I welcome the new industry. Thank you.
Commissioners, Mayor, my name is Greg Hansen, 1015 Grandview Avenue. I am the manager of B&B Lumber in Newton, Kansas, and we are excited as a business that sells their product and sells products such as theirs for the opportunity that the jobs coming into this community will bring for development of housing and other things within this town that keeps us alive and keeps our lumberyard open. So I wanted to state that, please.
Okay, I'm Gordon Stuckey. My wife, Ladine, and I are here this evening, and it's awful hard to stand up here and say something negative with all the positive things I've been hearing this evening. You know, I've been reading in the Newton Kansan the last weeks and months about this proposed development coming to town. We own a quarter section of land just a half a mile east of where this is proposed to show up. My wife and I have lived there for our married life of 60 years. I'm 80 years old. It's a family farm over there, and there's some really nice, good farmland right east of town that we can all be proud of. From the time that Tindall was interested in this 10 years ago, land prices have escalated. And like Mr. Broadhagen said, they're almost, you can get out of it what you gave for it to begin with. Anyway, after reading in the paper the last weeks and months, I thought, gosh darn, I'm going to call somebody and find out what they know about it. Every summer, after wheat harvest, my wife and I go to Colorado. We go out to West Cliff, we enjoy the mountains and cool air. But you guys, we have become good friends with 8 Texas families. And I thought, I'm just going to give them a call and see what, because there's a GAF business in Dallas. There's also one in Enos. And I thought, I'm going to see what they have to say. Okay, you guys, now listen to this. I mean, we all want jobs. We need jobs, but it's pretty darn sad that we're going to take 230 acres of pristine farmland out here east of town, and you have good, successful farmers out there. When we lost that job, 450 jobs, on less than a quarter section of land. So the first guy I called was Harry Reese. And he said, I just talked about, small talk about weather and stuff, and then he got to mention about what was going to happen in GAF. And then as soon as he said that, you know what he said? He said, no, 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 no. They know a whole different story about this thing than you and I do. And I mean, we're all a bunch of wannabes. We want to have something show up here in our town. GAF is a business that they've tried to get out of Dallas. And they came to Newton, Kansas. And Kansas, you know, we all know, we're a flyover state. No one wants to live around here and be around here. And they bought some property, or interested in some property out here, out far away, and they're going to do their thing. I called Dr. Phil Berry. He lives at Fort Worth. He didn't know a lot about it, but he said he'd read about it, and he said, you do not want to have that. Dr. Craig Morris, he lives at Flower Mound. It's just another suburb of Dallas. you guys, you need to listen to them talk. Dr. Phil Berry, he's a top orthopedic surgeon in Dallas, Texas. These guys all know something because they have this company right there by them. And they're trying to clean up one of the plants. It's taken a long time, and there's a lot of groundwater. It's taken a big deal. And you guys, the prevailing wind in Kansas blows from the south. And who do we have north of us? Just 1 mile. You know who it is. It's Prairie View. In the wintertime, hey, I raised hogs for 43 years. In the wintertime, nothing ever smells quite as bad as it does in the summertime. And I think we need to look at this whole thing and figure out what's the difference between come here and sick 'em, because we're all on the same page. We're all Newtonians. I've been here my whole life. And I think we need to listen and think this thing through before we just pass it, because we're some wannabes that want to get jobs. And our Newton school system, we need jobs. Google metal shingles, and you know what they'll say? There will be no asphalt shingles on houses in the future. It's all going to be metal shingles. And then we might have a mess out there to clean up. So, and I just talked to these guys this afternoon, probably 3 hours ago. And the one said, go, you go, and you say no, 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 no. Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Megan Kirshner. I have an address in Heston, but I am here as the Dean of Employment at Bethel College. We are excited to partner with GAF. We look forward to how this will contribute to the growth of Newton in population and in amenities. This could significantly help in our student enrollment growth. We recruit fantastic talent to Newton. Let's keep them here. In the coming years, we will provide all of our students with an employment opportunity as we become a federally designated work college. Partnering with GAF will help provide excellent opportunities for our students, and we're glad they'll be here.
Anybody else? Well, we are going to close the public hearing portion of this, and we'll move on to item B.
Item B, Mayor, is the item we discussed earlier. It's the resolution, and again, it has two components. It makes a finding to move forward with the IRBs, and it also approves the development agreement. So prior to taking action on this step, if there's any items subsequent down the line that you'd like to discuss, or there's any issues, now is the time. If you have any issues that require any sort of legal guidance, you always have the opportunity to go into executive session under attorney-client. If you're prepared to move forward with each of these items, you should go forward with the resolution and consider the same.
And what would be the resolution number?
That would be G-1301.
I move we approve resolution G-1301.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And then item C, we're going to consider a zoning amendment of the Tindall property from an I-2 to an I-3.
And as stated, this would be an obligation under the development agreement. This would require a supermajority vote to change the zoning from the Tindall property from an I-2 to an I-3. We would ask for a vote on that question.
I'll make a motion that we approve this change from an I-2 to an I-3.
I will second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes 5-0. Then item D, we're going to consider an ordinance amending the zoning for the Tindall property.
And this item will essentially formalize the action that you just took, which was approving the zoning from an I-2 to an I-3.
Ordinance number?
Yes. 5111-23.
make a motion that we approve ordinance number 511-23.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. And item E, we're going to consider an amendment to the city's option agreement with Tindall, extending the city's right to purchase to May 1 of '23.
Thanks, Mayor. This is an item the City Commission's considered before. It simply extends the city's option period to purchase the property from Tindall. I noted in the memo that this should give adequate time for any final items that need to be resolved prior to moving forward with a closing.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item F, we're going to consider an amendment to the purchase and sales agreement between the city and GAF Materials LLC, extending GAF's right to purchase to May 1, '23.
And this is a companion item to E. This matches the option period extended to GAF to execute their option to purchase from the city to line it up with May 1st of 2023.
I would make that a motion as well.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and the last item, we're going to consider releases of a restrictive covenant, sewer easement, and temporary or construction easement dedication located on the Tindall property.
This is the final item. We would ask for a motion to approve the 3 releases that release those 3 encumbrances on the property. The basis is covered in my memo, but essentially those restrictions are no longer needed, and city staff supports the releases as presented.
I would make that motion.
I will second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and we do not have anybody signed up for citizen forum, so why don't we go around the horn? Commissioner Cry.
Had a great day out at Full Vision yesterday. They broke ground on a new $7 million addition to their building, and got to see lots of geese fly over during that ceremony. It was about that time of day. So anyway, I'm thankful for Beth. I'm so sad she can't be here tonight because she has really worked hard at this, and I'm just thankful that the city's going to grow.
Yeah, too, a shout out for Beth, if you're listening, Beth. We missed you, and thank you for all of your work on this, as well as the city staff. And I just want to say that in our water utility rates discussion that we were having, probably don't say enough to those folks who work in our water and sewer department, but we're very thankful. You know, we take it for granted that we turn our faucet on and everything comes out like we want it to, as well as the flush. And so we're thankful, and I hope that if they're listening, or if they're not, Suzanne, that you can convey that if we've taken anybody for granted, we surely do not want to do so. We're thankful for the work that they do.
Thank you.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say, looking forward to working with GAF even more in the future. I enjoyed my visit to Michigan City. I reserved my comments until the end just to maybe give a response, and I appreciate what's been said about the Dallas plant. I think there's a huge difference between what's happened in Dallas and happening in Dallas and what's happening here. And I'm thankful that the city can partner with a company that cares enough to make those changes and those improvements and to recognize where there is a problem and to fix that. And as far as particles or things that may be in the air that are unrecognizable to us as human beings, I'm no expert in air quality, but I will say that I trust our government enough in regards to restrictions and mandates and rules that they're a good enough company. They're going to follow those. They're not some company that showed up in the middle of the night and said, "Let us build a plant here." And so I'm super excited to see GF here in the future. And my interaction with them, although somewhat limited, has been nothing but exceptional, and super excited to see that company here with us.
there's been a lot of hard work done by everybody in this community at the staff level, the economic development team, Zach, the commission. I went out and I pulled some of our quality permits and to see the reports that were being submitted from some of the different plants and everything. They have to operate within this plant within the current standards. Any other plant that may be out there may have already been grandfathered in. It still operates within the permit levels for those communities and those regions and everything. So based off of that research and the hard work that has been put in by a whole lot of people, both seen and unseen, I think this is just a great relationship going forward.
Well, I would just like to say, I've said it before, teamwork makes the dream work, and this is a big old team that put a lot of the pieces together, and we pushed it across the finish line. None of us up here took this lightly, and we did our due diligence, and we did our research. And I also understand the neighbors that are living right there, and I can relate to that. And I might have similar feelings if I was living right across the road or a quarter mile away. However, our job here, you know, like we were talking about in our work session, you know, this community, we have to expand our tax base, and the best way to do that is on the industrial side and the commercial side. And otherwise, we are stagnant, and our revenues do not rise, and so we have to expand it. And this is just a wonderful way to do that with a good partner. I think that's we're gonna hear from you guys many years into the future about the things that you're gonna be involved in the community, and that's pretty exciting. And along with what Commissioner Cry was saying about when we went up to Full Vision yesterday, man, it was a beautiful day. They had an outside groundbreaking, and it was just gorgeous out there. But, you know, they're adding on. So we have a new company coming, Full Vision is adding on. There's lots of new things that are being built here. So, you know, we are on the cusp of that base expanding, and all of us are going to be the positive recipients of that. So, man, I thank all of you for coming, and we are adjourned.